Hello, hello, and
Hello.
welcome.
Hey, Anuska, how are you?
Hi, Nikki.
I
So
am
great to have
well.
you here. Yes, on this a bit dreary, rainy, windy day, because we actually don't live that far from each other, so we have basically the same weather.
It's pretty grey and wet where I'm looking out the window now. That's for sure.
So we're hoping to kind of cheer you up with this conversation about breath. And today we called it, "Are you feeling anxious before public speaking? How you breathe matters." And I think all of us, to some extent, feel some level of anxiety before public speaking or performing, quote unquote. But also, when we were talking initially, it's not just public speaking. Anytime we're really expressing ourselves, sharing something that's personal, vulnerable, difficult, there is some level of anxiety, I think,
Absolutely.
for us all. Whether it's with a loved one, a family member, same thing.
Colleague.
Yeah, it could be, if at work or whatever. So we're going to be talking today anyway about how we can use our breath to help kind of calm our nervous system, help us ground, and really kind of step into our power and feel more centered. So just very quickly before we get going, so my name is Anuska Taylor. For those of you who don't know, I'm an executive voice coach. I've been training voices for more than a decade, let's just say. And I really focus on two sides of the voice. So the sort of functional, technical aspect of voice, like how the voice works, how we get the greatest version of our voice out, the most expressive version, but also the sort of psychology behind the voice as well. So I'm also a Jungian life coach. And breath is obviously, without stating the obvious, very, very critical to voice use. But we're not going to be talking about it specifically around the voice today. But from my perspective, the breath and learning to use my breath has been an absolute game changer for me in meditation, in centering. So outside of being a singer and a voice coach. But super excited to have Nikki St. Paul here today, who is a certified breath coach. And I'll let you introduce yourself so I don't miss anything important out.
Thank you, Anuska. Thank you for having me. It's great that we connected. So as Anuska said, I'm a certified breath coach. And really, I think one of the things that people often hear breath work, and it's a term that's quite broad. And therefore, they think, well, what type of breath work do you do? So it's not surprising if people get a little bit confused. I think if I were to describe kind of the work that I do, it's on the more functional breathing end. It's really helping people who, and many of us, have dysfunctional breathing patterns. And it impacts the way that we think, the way that we feel, the way that we sleep. So how can we develop better breathing habits? And that's really what I help people to do, to help them to manage stress, anxiety, sleep better, all the things that are going to impact their well-being. So yeah, really great to be able to have this discussion and chat with you today.
And Nikki's going to be sharing some practical exercises at the end. So if you are watching the replay and you just want to go to the exercises, although we hope that you'll actually watch the whole thing, but
Please.
if you want to go back to the exercises as well, I will timestamp underneath this so you can find them. So I guess, and I'll let you talk a little bit more about this, but from my understanding, when we're in this sort of state of anxiety and stress, and I think that a lot of us are living in this kind of low grade anxiety. So there's that we're living in this kind of fight or flight, whether we're aware of it or not. And it just becomes more heightened in certain circumstances. I see this with people with their voice. The breath is very shallow, it's very high. They're often holding their breath without even realizing. I'm like, you are allowed to breathe. You don't have to like hold your breath. And I also think from this place, our mind is very almost like singularly focused. We can't sort of see the bigger picture. We're sort of, it's very much, I guess,
Tunnel vision.
Yeah, that sort of survival. I need to get up the tree. I'm being chased by a tiger. I can't think about anything else going on. I've just got to survive in this moment.
Exactly.
So are you able to just, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add there, but around
Yeah, I think
fight
that
or flight.
I think that the first step in developing better breathing habits, in breathing efficiently and breathing effectively, is breath awareness.
Yeah.
That really is the first thing. And people think, well, what is breath awareness? Well, look, we're breathing around 20,000 times a day.
Wow.
Sometimes slightly more, 22, 23,000. The figures change depending on which kind of source you look at. But we're breathing a lot. And we've been breathing since we're born. So many of us just think, well, I don't really need to be taught how to breathe because I've been doing it just fine for however many years I've been on the planet. But actually, what breath awareness is, it's like watching the breath. It's like observing it. It's at various times in the day, just paying attention to how our breath changes depending on what environment we're in, who we're talking to, where we are, what time of the month it is, if we are female, right? So just paying attention. And when we pay attention, what happens? Then you can actually do something about it. Because what I'll come on to in a minute is the beauty of the breath is that we can actually take control of it. As well as it going along in the background when we're sleeping, we can actually control our breath. Like we do it all the time. If you think about it, if you've ever ran for a bus or tried to catch a train, you run, and by the time you sit down on that train or that bus, you're out of breath, your heart rate is increased, you feel a bit sweaty, a bit clammy. You've actively done something that has changed your breathing pattern. So I think if you think of it in terms of public speaking, which is the topic of this live today, knowing that we can control our breathing, that is really allows people to step into their power. Just to go back to what we want to help people to do, knowing that you can slow it down at any given moment. Now that I find that empowering. So it's just, I would encourage people to, at certain times in the day, whether it's as you go to sit down to have your first cup of coffee or tea or herbal tea, just spend a few moments whilst maybe it's brewing and just notice your breath. And how do you do that? Well, just observe 10 breaths, count to 10, inhale, exhale, get you to 10. It's just a few moments. And then what you'll notice, or certainly what I've noticed, the people I speak to notice, when you start becoming aware of your breathing, you also get more in tune with the rest of your body.
Yeah.
The signals that it's giving out all day, that when we're running on autopilot or stuck in the stress cycle, as we said at the beginning, we're not even paying attention. And also, you then start to become aware of other people and your environment. You get more emotionally intelligent.
Yes, absolutely. And I know we spoke about this on our original call. This is a big part of the voice side of this too, but that deeper breathing, more mindful breathing also stimulates the vagus nerve, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system.
Exactly.
So we know there is a direct link between being more mindful and more conscious with our breathing and calming our nervous system and letting us kind of connect more. And also, I would say, if you've got any kind of aches and pains in the body, like breathing into it as well, like breathing into back pain, or whereas I think most of the time we're trying to run away, we're trying to like clamp down and tense versus allowing ourselves to sort of breathe into that discomfort.
Exactly.
So I think it's just so powerful.
It is so powerful knowing that we can control it. And I know that we've spoken about the nervous system a few times. That for those who perhaps aren't as familiar, obviously our nervous system is like our control center. It controls our movement, our thinking, everything we do. And the part of the nervous system that is more relevant to the breath is the autonomic nervous system. And it's split into two branches of the parasympathetic, or rest, digest, relax, or the sympathetic, which is the kind of the fight, flight, freeze part of the nervous system. And I think the main message I would say is both of them, we need them both. They're both needed. So the fight, flight, freeze is there to keep us safe.
Yeah.
And the rest and repair and digest is there to do those things. But we can't have one without the other. The problem is, as you said, people are stuck. A lot of people who are anxious about public speaking are stuck in that stress moment, and they've got that kind of dilated pupils, all the blood is running to the heart and the musculoskeletal to get them ready for action. But then they need to get in the flow state to think about being creative, answering tough questions from the audience, standing in front of 100 people or on a Zoom call with 3 people.
Exactly. And also from that perspective, what tends to happen is the muscles in the throat tighten. So the voice just can't function as freely as when we can actually deepen the breath, become more mindful and conscious of the breath. The voice can just function better. So we spoke about this as well before. You talk about breath awareness, and I remember when you said that, I was like, there's so many parallels between what you were talking about and what I noticed, because I would say it's exactly the same with the voice. I was actually in a cafe this morning, and there was a little toddler, and he was just making all the sounds. Funnily enough, I was laughing away because he was making all the sounds that I do with clients as adults, but he was just doing them as like a 18-month-old without even thinking about it. He was going, and he was just doing whatever. And I was like, oh, so we all do this stuff very, very naturally as young children and babies. And then we unlearn it as we get older. Yes. And I think there's that similarity. Like, we know how to breathe as babies and young children. Yes. And then life gets in the way and we start breathing shallow.
This is it, Anuska, because if you ever sit and watch a baby, please do that responsibly. The baby that's yours, or at least in your care. Just thought I'd add that bit in. If you ever watch a baby, every time they inhale, their belly rises massively. Yes. And when they exhale, it goes down.
Yes.
But for some reason, as we get older, we forget that, and we're breathing high in our chest. We're over breathing. And as you said, we're sometimes holding our breath. When we're waiting for an email, there's that whole phenomenon, email apnea, where people, they're waiting at 9 o'clock, they log on and they realize, oh my goodness, I thought I left my inbox at 0. It's now on, 72 after a long weekend. So they hold their breath.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so interesting. And so I say this to people all the time. It's like, from your sort of most true, authentic, natural state, how to use your voice. You've just unlearned it. Yeah. So we've got to get you back into that baby sort of childlike place of expression and freedom, because we know it's there with the breath. It's there with the expression. So I think it's very interesting. And so it's exactly the same with the voice, that we just don't even think about our voice unless something goes wrong, or we lose our voice, or we're speaking and we're like, oh, my voice isn't coming out, or it's croaky, or it's raspy, or whatever. So massive parallels. So, I mean, this is also one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because there's so many parallels. This is another parallel. So you talk a lot about nose breathing versus mouth breathing, which I do too as a voice coach. So do you want to talk about it from your perspective first of all? Yeah.
Lovely. So I think we've got a little visual that you can get up on the screen.
Give me 1 second. Rather magic of.
Awesome. Amazing stuff. Okay. So this is going to be an abridged version, and I'll try and focus on the things that are really relevant to people that are about to do public speaking and are feeling anxious. So we can breathe through our nose and we can breathe through our mouth, right? So that is, but a little phrase that really helps me that I've heard several times: the nose is for breathing, the mouth is for eating, most of the time. So sometimes in sort of very high intensity exercise, you will need to breathe with your mouth. And it doesn't mean that you should never breathe with your mouth ever again. It's just about trying to do more nasal breathing than mouth breathing. And some of the reasons as to why is, if you think about it, if you open your mouth and you take a breath in, it just kind of goes in unfiltered, untethered. It just enters your body and gets down into your lungs. Whereas when you breathe through your nose, there's that friction through the nasal passages, nasal cavity, that helps to control the breath and actually helps our breathing to be far more efficient. And the other thing with nasal breathing is when we breathe through our nose, it triggers the neuroreceptors in your nose and the sinuses that signal it's safe. They signal that it's okay and help you to get to that calm, collected state that you'd like to be when you're about to present or have a difficult conversation. So I think then the other thing I would say is sleeping. If we can try to get in a pattern of sleeping and using our nose to breathe during sleep. Now that's easier said than done. And sometimes some people put a little bit of tape over their nose, and it's not the whole mouth, because people get worried, well, how will I breathe? Obviously, if you've got a nasal congestion or nasal infection, there might be reasons why you don't do that. But sometimes people get used to it by having a little bit of tape over their mouth during the day, just maybe 10, 15 minutes, just as a reminder to, oh, yes, I need to breathe through my nose. Because when you breathe through your nose, you get nitric oxide added to the breath. And what that does is it's a vasodilator and a bronchodilator. So it opens up the airways and opens up the circulatory system. The nitric oxide is doing that. So why does that matter? Well, the more that blood can flow through the system, the more the oxygen can get to the cells and the tissues in the brain. So you can actually then be able to think more clearly and be able to come up with what your opposing argument is, or how you want to put across your pitch, for instance. Yep. So there are so many benefits to it. And it means that rather than getting cold, dry, dirty air, your lungs are getting warm, humid, and purified air. So I think those are the reasons, and it really does slow the breath down, which helps to activate the parasympathetic nervous system as well.
And I would just add to that, so from a voice perspective, when people generally breathe more through their mouth, they tend to be more likely to gulp in air, and which is never going to help you speak with any kind of power. You're never going to feel like you get any control over your voice like that. Also, it dries the inside of the mouth. It will start to dry the vocal folds, so you'll find that your voice just doesn't function as well. So I have actually tried what you said. I read a book, you probably read it,
James Nestor, is it Breath?
James Nestor, and also the guy that wrote about sleep. I can't remember his name, but
Matthew Walker.
Yeah. So I did actually sleep for a while with tape over my mouth, and it really did make a big difference. I mean, I say it was exactly like you said. I just put a little bit like this way, so I
like micropore tape. Yeah. So we're not talking about duct tape. Just
yeah. Not being like held hostage or something. No.
Just a bit of micropore surgical tape, tiny little bit. Yeah. Just this way across your mouth. Yeah.
It definitely helped me. I definitely slept more soundly. Yeah. Which I was really surprised by, because as you say, it stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. But yes, so I think I'm just echoing what you're saying, because everything you've said is exactly what I sort of say to my clients, but also just know that if you can, breathing through your nose is going to help your voice function better as well.
Exactly. So and it just helps to ground you in the moment, and helps to just, as I said, signal safety. Yes. Because the issue is, in 2023, sometimes the stress response that kicks in isn't being kicked in because we're being chased by a lion or a tiger, or perhaps there's somebody who's coming in to burgle our home. It could just be, I'm nervous about what I need to say in this meeting. And therefore, it's perceived stress, it's perceived lack of safety. So by breathing through the nose, just a few nasal inhales and exhales can just signal that safety.
Absolutely. And actually, you can just try it. If you don't, you just try a few nasal breaths and see what you notice. And actually, moving on to that, let me go on to the next slide, because you're going to share a few exercises now with people. Absolutely. So that they can start to actually feel this for themselves, have the experience of this for themselves. So
absolutely.
I'm going to let you talk through your lovely slides.
So there's another one that I would share that isn't on the screen. So we talked about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, there's a way throughout the day to check what system is more dominant. It's called the nasal cycle test. And you literally get your hand, your index finger, place it underneath your nose and just exhale. And you'll notice that one nostril, the air passes more freely, more easily than the other. And this works in about 90% of people. I think it was first discovered in 1893 by Richard Kaiser. And if you struggle with that, you can just place one hand over a nostril, exhale, and then place another hand over the other nostril, just in case you don't feel it with the finger. But either way, if the left nostril is dominant, that means that it's the parasympathetic nervous system that is more dominant. If it's the right, then it's the sympathetic. So you might say, so what? Well, actually, if you test this in the morning, before and after food, in the evening, if you're sat there trying to get to sleep, you do a quick nasal test and you realize that your sympathetic nervous system is more dominant. It just helps to give you, oh, right, maybe I've got thoughts whirring around in my head. I need to do some breathing exercises to really stimulate the parasympathetic so that I can get to sleep. So it's just it takes a second to just do that. So I thought I'd share that, because you might find that people who are preparing to get ready to present or have a hard conversation, doing that just helps them to take action. So moving on quickly to this, the balanced breathing. So if you find that you're about to do a public speaking event, you are about to have a hard conversation with a family member, or maybe you need to complain to a company and you're worried about how you're going to be able to get your refund or whatever it might be, what the balanced breathing does is you can inhale through the nose for a count of 4, exhale through the nose for a count of 4, and you just repeat that 10 times or as many times as you need. It's great to do in the middle of the day if you're feeling a bit out of whack, but actually it's also great to do at any time in the day. So it's one of those practices that's like water. You can do it as many times as you need. And I'll just show you what it looks like now. So you just inhale for 4. And then you exhale for 4. So you're inhaling for 4. You don't have to put your hands up there. That was showing you 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. You don't have to put your hands up. You could literally do this just stood outside the meeting room, or if you're about to go on stage. And the other thing that I would add, if we have enough time to add this, is the type of breathing that I'm doing. It's called the ocean breath, or ujjayi breathing, if you look at it from a pranayama perspective. So what I'm doing is I'm slightly constricting the area at the back of my throat called the glottis, and that stimulates the vagus nerve, which helps to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So how do I do that? You get your right hand, put it in front of your mouth, and I'm just going to demonstrate. It shows you how you almost pretend as if you're fogging up a mirror. And that's the sound that you want to make with your mouth closed. So it's that fogging up a mirror and unfogging the mirror, so backwards almost. And you can feel that huff sound, that ocean sound. That's the sound that you want to make when you're inhaling for 4 and exhaling for 4. So it's a really gentle sound. The person 10 rows behind you doesn't need to hear the sound, but you can hear the gentle ocean sound, and you inhale gently for 4 and exhale for 4. And it really helps to balance out.
Brilliant.
And I'll just show you another one, which is...
To go to the next slide?
Yeah, if you can do. This is a really great one. So this is the 4-4-8. And this is amazing if you are anxious, stressed, about to present or speak, and you want to be able to be at your best. What we're going to do here is you extend the exhale. So the 4 at the beginning is 4 inhales through the nose. So inhale for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You hold your breath for a count of 4. Now, if you want to, you can just use your hands to hold your nose. I use something called pranayama mudra, but you essentially take your 2 fingers, bring them down, and you're just using your thumb and your ring finger to hold your nose.
Yeah.
So you hold for 4, and then you exhale for a count of 8. So with the exhale, that's where we slow down the breath. That's where we're focusing on breathing more through the diaphragm. And you can repeat this exercise until you feel calm. You could just do a round of 10, or you could do as many as needed, because it helps to activate that parasympathetic response, but also helps you to relax and focus. So you inhale for 4, hold for 4, and then you exhale for 8. And it's the extended exhale that really helps you to relax and focus. So the final one, which I'm very excited to share, is the physiological sigh. Now, we all sigh. Like we're sighing several times in an hour. It's happening naturally. But actually, if you're anxious before presenting, or there's a high energy moment with a racing mind, do this 1 to 3 times beforehand. And it gets the body out of the stress response in real time. It stimulates the vagus nerve, helping to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. Because what it does is it slows down the heart rate and calms the fight and flight response. So what you do, and you do this with me now, you inhale through your nose, you do a quick pause, and then you do another short inhale before you exhale. So let's do it now. Inhale, quick pause, another inhale, and exhale out through the mouth. And it just has that ability. If you do that 1 to 3 times, obviously I was having to stop because I was having to talk to you. Let's do it now without talking. So I'm going to inhale, quick pause, inhale again, and then exhale. So and it just has that ability to really just ground you in the moment.
I love that one.
It's so
I
quick.
really feel a difference as well immediately.
And there are so many papers that talk about why this works, and people are just finding out about it now. I've heard it on so many different podcasts, read so many papers about it, but it's the fact that we're doing something that our body does naturally. It sighs naturally, but we're getting in the driving seat and doing it ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to remove this now so we can go back to our lovely faces. Thank you for sharing that. So as I said, I will timestamp those. So if you just want to find those, you can. And then you can go over them as many times as you want. Because I think, as you said, just so useful. And you can do those. No one needs to know that you're doing those. You could do those while you're sort of literally waiting to kind of go into a meeting or waiting outside an office or something. No one needs to know you're doing that.
That's the beauty. That is the beauty of those, particularly the physiological sigh. It takes seconds to do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So just to sort of round this up then, because obviously we were talking more about using the breath to kind of help to ground you, to help you feel a little bit more calm, etc. before. But I just want to share a few exercises just to get you prepared for speaking and get the breath ready to support the voice, so to speak.
Nice.
So these are hopefully quite straightforward. So the first one is that what I'd like you to do is put your hand in front of your mouth and almost like pretend there's a feather on your hand. So you're just going to blow very gently, like you're trying to blow the feather off your hand. But when you do it, really importantly, I want you to just slightly pull the belly in as you do it. So it's a we're just starting to activate. So really important, this is all soft and relaxed. It's only the belly that's actually really engaging at this point. Then I want you to imagine that there's perhaps there's a few candles on a birthday cake, and you need a little bit more effort to blow the candles out. So still imagine it's in front of you. And again, you're still engaging the belly. So it's going to be a
Okay.
So yeah, so it's kind of like there's almost like a little bit of a pump going on, because one of the biggest things I see with speakers is they're trying to push the voice from the neck and the throat, and it's like a from here.
Exactly.
Forget that your larynx is in your throat. Drive the breath from the belly, from the diaphragm.
That is such a good point, Anuska, because I think 80% of our breathing, our primary breathing muscle is the diaphragm.
Yes.
And the secondary is sort of the chest and the back and the shoulders and all those accessory muscles. But 80% of our breathing should be happening with the diaphragm to get the most. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And what's really important about that is if you breathe from the diaphragm, you actually have then control over that exhale. If you breathe from here, you've got no control over that exhale. It's just going to come out however it comes out. And that is when people start to run out of breath when they speak, because they've got no control over it. Whereas if you gently practice drawing in the belly as you speak, we speak on the exhale, you can then decide how much air do I actually need to say this sentence, or to say whatever I need to say. So the final one you can do, just to sort of add some sound to this, exactly the same thing. The only thing this time, versus blowing out some imaginary candles, you're going to make a psh sound. So you're going to pull the belly in and make a psh, psh. So you really hopefully feel the power behind that sound. Then you can replace that psh with whatever you need to say. So, good morning, my name is Anuska. You can drive the sound then. But this is just a nice way, because I think for a lot of people, they are not used to driving the sound from their diaphragm, from their belly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's usually here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they get very, very, and obviously if they're also using their mouth to breathe a lot, they often get a dry mouth, and they're all of those things. Whereas if your mouth is closed primarily when you're not talking, obviously, then you're not going to get that sort of dryness within the mouth as much.
Absolutely. And then obviously when you add nerves to the mix, we tend to get dryness, and all of that can sort of be exacerbated by nerves.
Yeah.
Yes. So So it's just, so if we can combine all of this, and I think it's just really getting into a little bit of a habit, because I think initially you might have to put a little bit more energy and thought into it, but eventually you're just like, oh yeah, I can just go into that physiological, well, no, what was it?
Physiological sigh.
I was going to say psychological sigh. You could just kind of go into it quite quickly, because you're like, yep, I've got that. And the same with the voice. You're like, yep, I'm just going to draw my belly in as I speak.
Exactly.
That's going to power my voice. Exactly. So I hope that that's given you a few little ideas of ways to sort of work with your breath to help you feel more calm and literally have that sort of physiological shift in your body. It's not just thinking, it's there's actually a shift happening internally.
Exactly. Our heart rate going down, our body realizing that actually it's okay, we're safe, we can get there, get on that stage and do our thing.
Absolutely. So I'd like to thank Nikki so much. It was really wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
And do you want to just share how people can find you or work with you? Or
absolutely, yeah. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a certified breath coach. I work with individuals and have programs set up so that they can actually, from start to finish, learn how to use their breath to sort of manage stress and anxiety and sleep and energy issues. I also work with organizations to add breath into their employee wellness programs. You can find me on Instagram at Breathing Mindful, or I'm also available on LinkedIn as well. So
you're very active on LinkedIn.
I do try to be.
You're very good. You're always like, I mean, it's probably because of the algorithms, but I always see you like commenting and.
Oh no, thank you, Anuska.
No, it's good. So thank you so much. I hope that's been of use. Everything will be underneath anyway, description, all the links to Nikki if you're interested in finding out more. If you're interested in working on your voice, all my links are below as well. If you'd like to understand how to use this as a speaker, then, but yes, I think the conclusion to this is your breath is incredibly powerful.
Exactly
and the more
that.
you can work with it and learn to bring more mindfulness and consciousness to it, it's going to help you in every aspect of your life, not just speaking. So
powerful way to end. Yeah. So how we breathe matters. It links, as you said, to stress and anxiety. So it's worthwhile developing, better breathing habits.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for watching. Most of you will be watching the replay. So thank you for watching the replay, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.